We all know that feeling, right? Like you are sitting in traffic, you are completely boxed in.
Oh yeah, the worst.
Right. And you are late for a crucial meeting. Your phone is just buzzing with urgent messages right there in the cup holder. And you can physically feel your jaw clenching. And you tell yourself to, just take a breath. You say, it's just stress. It's all in my head. I will get over it once I park.
Yeah, we all do that.
But what if that is entirely wrong? I mean, what if, as you are sitting there just gripping the steering wheel, your body is quietly printing out a highly detailed biological receipt of every single stressful moment you experience?
It is, it's a sobering reality to confront, really, because we are conditioned to view stress as this ephemeral passing cloud, like an emotion that just evaporates the second the stressful event concludes.
Right, like you step out of the car and it's gone.
Exactly. But biologically speaking, however, the body is a meticulous accountant. I mean, it keeps a ledger of absolutely everything.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to look at exactly what is printed on that biological receipt.
Yeah, it's a long receipt, too.
It really is. So we are exploring a concept called allostatic load, which is essentially the physical wear and tear of stress. We are going to look at the 18 specific biomarkers the body uses to calculate this burden.
Which is fascinating.
And we are diving into some incredible research on how this load actually alters the physical architecture of the aging brain. And, well, most importantly, we're going to look at how you can fight back against it.
To truly understand what this wear and tear is, we kind of have to rethink our basic assumptions about how the human body maintains stability.
Like homeostasis.
Right, exactly. We are usually taught about homeostasis, this idea that your body has a perfect static baseline.
Like a thermostat.
Yeah, like a thermostat set to 98.6 degrees that it constantly tries to return to. But our biology is actually far more proactive than that. And this brings us to a concept called allostasis.
Allostasis, got it.
Right. So allostasis is the brain's predictive regulation of the internal environment. It is the process of anticipating a future need and, changing the body's systems before the event even happens.
So it's not just reacting to the fact that I am cold right now. It's like my brain is looking at the snow outside, looking at my light jacket, and predicting he is going to freeze in 5 minutes. Better start revving up the internal furnace right now.
That is exactly the mechanism at work. It is an evolutionary superpower, really.
Wow.
If your brain predicts you are going to need to sprint away from a threat, or, in a modern context, step onto a stage to give a massive presentation.
Which feels like a threat.
It does. So it alters your blood pressure, it floods your bloodstream with glucose, and spikes your heart rate long before you actually exert any physical energy.
Just getting ready.
Exactly. It prepares you to survive.
Yeah.
But that proactive survival mechanism comes with a heavy physiological tax.
A tax that scientists call allostatic load? It is the cumulative price we pay for constantly forcing our bodies to adapt to stress over years and, well, decades, really.
Right.
But I want to get into the hard data here. What exactly is the body measuring to calculate this load?
Right, the 18 biomarkers.
Yeah, we know researchers use this specific panel of 18 biomarkers. How do these actually cascade through the body?
Well, the cascade begins the moment the brain predicts a threat. It sends a signal down the HPA axis.
A hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Exactly, which acts as the body's central alarm system. This activates the first category of our biomarkers, which is the neuroendocrine system.
Okay.
These are the primary chemical messengers. We measure things like cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. They basically flood the system to give you instant alertness and energy.
Which, that feels great if you're actually running from a physical threat.
Right.
But if you're just sitting at your desk reading a really stressful, passive-aggressive email from your boss, that massive flood of energy has nowhere to go.
Nowhere at all.
So what happens to all those chemicals?
Well, they force a radical shift in your metabolism, which brings us to the second set of markers.
The metabolic ones.
Right. So to fuel this anticipated physical struggle, cortisol commands your liver to just dump glucose into your bloodstream.
Oh, wow.
And then your body has to pump out massive amounts of insulin to manage that sugar. Over time, if this happens constantly, you develop insulin resistance.
Because it's just working overtime.
Exactly. And this metabolic chaos also throws off your lipid processing, which is why we track biomarkers like elevated triglycerides and a shift toward bad cholesterol.
Wait, so my stressful email is actively messing with my blood sugar and my cholesterol?
It is, yeah.
That is wild to think about. And I imagine all that extra thick, sugary, fat-laden blood takes a toll on the plumbing, right?
It creates enormous cardiovascular strain, which is our third category.
Okay.
We look at rising systolic and diastolic blood pressure and pulse pressure. But what's really telling here are the heart rate variability metrics.
Right, HRV.
Yeah, HRV is essentially a window into your nervous system. A healthy heart doesn't beat perfectly like a metronome. There is this micro variation between beats driven by the parasympathetic nervous system.
That's the rest and digest brake pedal, right?
Exactly, the brakes. Chronic stress wears out those brakes. Your heart rate variability plummets, meaning your body is just stuck leaning on the gas pedal.
And if you're stuck on the gas, anticipating a fight, your body also starts anticipating, getting hurt in that fight.
Right, which activates the immune system. That's the fourth category.
Uh,
The brain assumes a physical threat might result in a wound, so it preemptively spikes systemic inflammation to fight off potential infections.
Even if there's no physical wound.
Exactly. So we track inflammatory biomarkers like interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein.
I've heard of CRP, yeah.
Yeah, it's very common. And finally, all of this hormonal, metabolic, and inflammatory chaos leads to anthropometric changes.
Which means
Specifically, the accumulation of visceral fat around your organs. So we measure that by body mass index and waist-to-hip ratio.
so we have neuroendocrine messengers, metabolic shifts, cardiovascular strain, immune system inflammation, and physical fat storage. That makes 18 distinct markers.
That's the full panel.
But why do researchers insist on measuring all 18 together to get an allostatic load score? I mean, couldn't I just go to my doctor and ask for a cortisol test?
Well, what's fascinating here is how deceptive a single marker can be.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you might get your blood drawn on a Tuesday morning, and your cortisol happens to look perfectly normal.
Okay.
But what you don't see is that your insulin is heavily dysregulated, your inflammatory markers are silently creeping up, and your heart rate variability is just tanking.
So the cortisol alone is lying to you.
Basically, the 18-point score gives us a holistic multi-system view of the burden. It captures the reality that when one system is pushed to its limit, the others have to work overtime to compensate.
It sounds a lot like a car's dashboard. Like, it's rarely just the check engine light flashing in isolation. It's the tire pressure dropping, the oil temperature creeping up, and the transmission fluid running low all at the exact same time.
That's a great way to look at it.
And if the mechanic only looks at the oil, they completely miss the fact that the entire vehicle is slowly drifting into the red zone.
And understanding how we drift into that red zone requires looking at the mechanics of wear and tear. Why does that physiological burden get so heavy for some people and not others?
Right, because we all handle it differently.
Exactly. The research identifies a few basic factors, like the frequency of exposure to stress and how long it takes you to recover. But the most critical factor is the magnitude of your reactivity.
Wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go.
So, if two people face the exact same stressful environment, let's say they both work the same demanding job, they are walking into the exact same high-stakes performance review with a difficult boss. Why would one person's biology completely overreact, dumping cortisol and spiking their blood pressure, while the other person's body doesn't seem to react much at all? I mean, they are in the exact same room.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it goes right back to that concept of the predictive brain. Your brain doesn't just passively observe the room. It makes a guess based on your deeply held subconscious templates of how the world works.
Interesting.
Chronic biological stress is essentially a state of unresolved prediction error.
Unresolved prediction error. Break that down for me. What does that mean?
Think of it like an internal blueprint. If a person's blueprint dictates that authority figures are inherently dangerous or, that they themselves are inadequate and destined to fail, their brain constantly predicts a negative, threatening outcome.
It's basically expecting a disaster.
It expects a disaster, so it preemptively ramps up the entire stress response. The hormones, the inflammation, the blood pressure.
All of it.
Right. But the person who stays calm in that same meeting has an internal blueprint that predicts safety, or at least a manageable challenge. Their brain doesn't need to mount a physiological defense.
That completely flips how we think about this. The stress isn't the performance review itself. The stress is the mismatch between a brain expecting a catastrophe and a reality that you're desperately trying to survive.
Exactly.
But what happens when that prediction error never gets resolved? let's talk about where all that wear and tear actually lands. Because if the body is flooded with this biological load, the ultimate target and the ultimate shock absorber is the brain itself.
And that is where a very compelling exploratory study published in Frontiers comes in.
Right.
Researchers took 111 healthy older adults, ranging in age from 65 to 83.
And they were healthy, right? No dementia.
Absolutely no cognitive impairment. They were completely healthy. The researchers calculated their allostatic load using those 18 biomarkers we discussed, and then put them in neuroimaging scanners to see if the physical structure of their brains reflected their biological receipts.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the results showed that stress isn't just an emotion you manage. It literally reshapes the physical architecture of the brain.
It does.
They found that the folks with a high allostatic load had significantly lower gray matter volume.
Yeah.
Like their brain tissue was actually shrinking.
Yeah, and it was shrinking in highly specific stress-sensitive regions.
Like where?
Well, the prefrontal cortex, which handles our complex decision-making and impulse control,
Okay.
the insula, which is tied to emotional awareness, and the basal ganglia, which helps regulate our behaviors.
But why those areas? Like, why does cortisol make brain tissue shrink?
Because those specific regions are incredibly dense with glucocorticoid receptor.
Glucocorticoid.
Right, you can think of them as docking stations for stress hormones.
Oh, I see.
When cortisol levels are chronically high, these areas are constantly bathed in it. Over time, that overstimulation actually becomes toxic.
So they just burn out.
Basically. To protect themselves from this toxic environment, the neurons literally begin to retract their connections. They pull their branches inward, and as a result, the overall volume of the gray matter physically decreases.
Wow. So the very areas of the brain that we rely on to regulate our emotions, the parts that tell us, hey, it's just an email, calm down, those are physically deteriorating because of the cumulative stress load.
That's exactly what's happening.
The gray matter, the actual processes of the brain, are shrinking.
Yeah.
But the researchers also looked at the white matter, right? Like the cables connecting those processors.
They did using advanced diffusion imaging.
Yeah.
White matter tracks are essentially the insulated communication cables of the brain.
Okay.
They allow different lobes to send signals to each other at really high speeds. The protective insulation around these cables is called myelin.
Right, myelin.
In the individuals with high allostatic load, the researchers found that these tracks were degrading. They observed something called higher mean diffusivity and lower fractional anisotropy.
Okay, let's translate that for the listener. What does it actually mean if my brain cables have high diffusivity?
Imagine a healthy white matter tracked as water flowing through a perfectly sealed, tightly constructed pipe.
Oh.
The water flows fast and in one precise direction. That directional flow is high fractional anisotropy.
Nice and efficient.
Very efficient. But chronic stress creates systemic inflammation, which we know degrades myelin over time.
Oh, so the pipe breaks down.
Exactly. If the insulation frays, the pipe starts leaking. The signal scatters in all directions instead of moving efficiently to its target. That scattering is high mean diffusivity.
So it's literally leaking signals.
Yeah, and this study found that kind of degradation in major highways of the brain, like the corpus callosum, which connects the left and right hemispheres.
So a high biological stress receipt means shrinking processors and frayed, leaking cables.
It paints a stark picture.
Now, for anyone listening, this sounds terrifying, especially in the context of brain aging and dementia. But the researchers made a very distinct point about Alzheimer's disease here that we need to clarify.
Yes, it is a vital distinction. The researchers used PT scans to look for beta amyloid accumulation in these older adults.
Which is the Alzheimer's stuff.
Right. Beta amyloid plaques are one of the primary molecular signatures of Alzheimer's disease. But they found absolutely no correlation between high allostatic load and beta amyloid levels.
None at all.
None. The heavy stress load did not increase Alzheimer's pathology. It also did not alter how the brain metabolized glucose or how blood perfused through the tissue.
Which means we are looking at something completely distinct. We're looking at a specific marker of stress-induced brain aging.
Precisely.
It's structural damage driven by a lifetime of physiological wear and tear, but it is not necessarily the onset of a neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's.
Exactly. It is the brain physically adapting, or well, rather maladapting, to a constant biological state of emergency, independent of Alzheimer's pathology.
Okay, but structure dictates function. If my prefrontal cortex has less gray matter and my corpus callosum has frayed cables leaking my neural signals, how does that actually manifest for me on a Tuesday afternoon?
Right, practically speaking.
Yeah, what happens to a person's cognitive performance when their brain is in this state?
Well, the cognitive test revealed something quite surprising, actually. You might intuitively assume that shrinking brain volume and fraying cables would result in memory loss or a massive drop in general intelligence.
That's what I would assume.
But in this specific healthy group, the elevated stress levels did not correlate with reduced global cognition. Their processing speed was fine, their episodic memory was intact, and their general executive function held up.
Wait, really? So they could still remember names and solve problems?
They could, but there was one critical failure point.
What was it?
The high allostatic load significantly correlated with much poorer performance in one specific domain: selective attention.
Selective attention.
Yes. Selective attention is the cognitive ability to lock onto a relevant stimulus while actively suppressing distracting, irrelevant information.
Oh.
It is what allows you to focus on writing a complex report while the office around you is loud and chaotic.
I think of it like this. Your brain is still a really powerful computer. Because your memory and processing speed are largely intact, the hard drive and the CPU are working fine.
That's a good way to put it.
But because your selective attention is shot, it's like your mouse keeps randomly jumping across the screen.
Right.
You just cannot click on the right tab. The chronic stress has literally hijacked your ability to focus on command.
That analogy holds up neurologically, actually. The neural networks that govern attention and focus rely heavily on the prefrontal cortex and the specific white matter highways connecting it to the rest of the brain.
The same ones that shrunk.
Exactly. We just established that those exact regions bear the brunt of stress-induced atrophy. When your prefrontal cortex shrinks, your ability to exert top-down control over your attention weakens.
So you just get distracted by everything.
Your brain defaults back to survival mode. It becomes overly reactive to every sound, every distraction, and every notification. Because, a brain predicting danger wants to scan the whole environment. It won't let you just focus on one tab.
So we have seen the biological receipt. We've mapped out the cascade of the 18 biomarkers. We've seen how that load neurotoxically shrinks the gray matter, inflammatory degrades the white matter, and ultimately steals our selective attention.
It's a lot.
For the listeners sitting in traffic right now, the obvious question is how to break this chain. How do we shield the aging brain and lower this allostatic load before the damage is done?
Well, this brings us to a crucial piece of the puzzle, which is resource restoration.
Yep.
If the damage comes from a chronic, unresolved activation of the stress response, the antidote is actively replenishing the body's reserves and, importantly, actively signaling safety to the brain's predictive models.
And the undisputed heavy hitter of restoration, according to the research, is sleep.
Oh, without question. Sleep is the primary biological window when the brain clears out metabolic waste and the HPA axis is allowed to reset.
But the research highlights a dangerous trap, doesn't it?
It does. Sleep deprivation doesn't just prevent recovery, it acts as a primary stressor itself.
Oh, man.
Yeah, lacking sleep actively adds to your allostatic load by keeping daytime cortisol elevated and keeping those inflammatory markers just simmering. Guarding your sleep is absolutely foundational.
The sources also put a massive emphasis on physical activity.
Yes, they do.
The data is clear that exercising in the past 30 days is strongly associated with dramatically lower levels of perceived stress, loneliness, and depression in older adults.
It's incredibly effective.
But let me ask you this on behalf of the listener.
Yeah.
If these systems are all connected, like the neuroendocrine, the metabolic, the immune, the cardiovascular, does fixing just one thing, like protecting your sleep or starting a daily walk, actually lower the entire 18-point score?
This raises an important question, and the physiology here is actually incredibly encouraging.
Oh.
Because these systems are so tightly interlinked, an intervention in one area ripples through the rest of them.
Really? So cascades in a good way, too.
Exactly. When you engage in physical activity, you are not just burning calories, you are improving your cell's insulin sensitivity, which drops the metabolic load.
Right.
You are reducing systemic inflammation, which drops the immune load. And you are physically metabolizing circulating stress hormones, which lowers the neuroendocrine load.
You're essentially proving to the dashboard that the car is fine.
That's a perfect way to phrase it. You are providing tangible physical evidence to your brain's predictive models that the body is capable and safe. A walk around the block signals to the brain that the threat has been managed, allowing the entire system to step down from a baseline of threat anticipation to a baseline of recovery.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring everything we've talked about together.
Okay.
Stress is not just a passing mood or a vague feeling of being overwhelmed. It is a highly measurable physical reality.
A literal receipt.
A biological load calculated across 18 biomarkers that track your body's exhausting struggle to adapt to the modern world. And if left unchecked, this allostatic load literally reshapes the physical architecture of your brain.
Yes, it shrinks the processors and frays the cables.
Exactly. It shrinks the gray matter, frays the white matter, and steals your ability to focus. But you are not a passive victim to this process. By fiercely protecting your sleep and roaming your body, you can interrupt this cascade, lower your biological receipt, and actively protect your brain as you age.
It really reframes stress management. I mean, it isn't a luxury or a wellness trend. It is fundamental cellular maintenance for your brain.
Definitely.
But, before you wrap up, there is one final, somewhat mind-bending concept from the literature that I think deserves attention.
Lay it on me.
Well, when we talk about biological aging, the research points to mechanisms like cellular senescence and the shortening of telomeres.
Telomeres, those are the protective caps on the ends of your DNA strands, right?
Right, exactly. But fascinatingly, the data suggests that even the subjective expectation of aging, or just the constant expectation of a stressful future, can create a self-fulfilling prophecy at the cellular level.
Wait, just the mental expectation that things will be bad actually ages your cells faster.
It comes back to the predictive brain we were talking about.
Wow.
If chronic stress is your brain constantly predicting a threatening, unmanageable future, it keeps your body flooded with that allostatic load, which we know damages tissue.
Because you're constantly bracing for impact.
Exactly. But what if you actively work to change that internal blueprint? What if you shift your core expectations of tomorrow from a prediction of inevitable decline to a prediction of capability and safety?
That's a huge shift.
It is. And the science implies that by simply changing your mental blueprint, you could lower the biological alarm, literally rewrite your cellular biology, and protect your DNA from premature aging.
So the next time you're sitting in traffic, clutching the steering wheel and clenching your jaw, remember, your body is quietly printing a receipt for that exact moment. The question is, what kind of biological transaction do you want to authorize?
Such a great question.
Do you want to pay the heavy tax of anticipating a disaster? Or can you rewrite the blueprint, take a deep breath, and signal to your cells that everything is actually going to be okay? Something for you to ponder until next time.